Leveling endlessly with the strongest system. Chapter 61, Roy vs. Carl. Grabbing the red sides of his face that sting like a bitch, Carl gritted his teeth, and words escaped his mouth one at a time. Why you dare? Do you know who I am? Roy seemed indifferent to his heart. No, I don't, and honestly, even if I did, I would have still slapped you, silly. Sarcasm came out of his mouth like a waterfall, drenching Carl to the level of a wet dog. Bullshit. That barely hurt. Although he said that, his face was saying something else. Tears were escaping his eyes, and the red and visible palm-shaped mark on his face told everyone that Roy's slap was hurting him like a bitch. Roy's lips thinned into a murderous smile. Then I guess, I have to continuously slap you until you go silly. Roy slapped out with such speed that Carl couldn't even register what happened before it landed on his face. Pa! The crisp sound of a slap landing on someone's face rang out, but this was just one of the many slaps Roy dished out on Carl, who first tried to fight back but failed. Then tried to run away but failed at that too, as he was immobilized in a vicious way by Roy. After freeing him of his restraint, the 13th slap that Roy landed on Carl's face sent him circling all the way back to the embrace of his wives. The pedestrians licked their lips in excitement, and some onlookers threw their heads back, laughing at the top of their lungs. What luck! I came out to buy some fruits for my wife and breathe in some fresh air, but I unexpectedly got to watch a comedy show for free. I don't know why, but seeing this big guy slap that little bastard silly is funny to me. Carl had been a pain in the ass for the people of this neighborhood for years. He bullied quite a few but was never held accountable for his lowly actions because of his father bribing the official. But this time, he had offended the wrong person in his drunken stupor. I'm afraid he won't get out of this mess scot-free. I hate this bastard too. He is rich, but he still ripped me off like a thug and forced me to run errands for him as if I were his slave. I didn't dare hit back as my parents worked for his father. I was afraid he would get them kicked. Complaining to the officials of the Southern District wasn't helpful either, as Merchant Gray had them on his payroll. I'm the most happiest seeing him in this situation. The faces of Carl's wives were red and puffing with embarrassment for his sake, but even more than that was their shock at seeing him get beaten ruthlessly. Is this really happening? The bully got bullied. Carl wasn't an arse without a reason. After Carl got disqualified from the awakening ceremony, he became depressed. He would drink most of the time and do drugs, but then he got into a brawl and beat a man to death. Becoming so afraid he would be thrown behind bars that he begged his father to rig the case and save his hide, which was the same as telling a father to commit a crime for his son's sake. Gray only had this one son, and he was the last memory of his wife, so he used his connections and good bars to bury the matter. That day, Carl realized what power he held. Even killing a person wouldn't mean the destruction of his life. Ever since then, both of Carl's wives were used to watching him bully others, and if he were targeting someone not pleasant to their eyes, they would join him in beating the target to let off the stress of not getting their desires fulfilled. Carl looked at Roy with a cruel gaze. Did the likes of you just slap me? Forget about getting slapped. Even the concept of getting hit back while beating others was foreign to Carl, but the slaps of the man himself shattered his skewed perception of reality and helped him sober up. Did I give you amnesia with that last slap or what? Roy rolled his eyes at the dumb bastard. Hearing what he said, Carl spewed out a bucket of blood. Why you just made the entire Gray family your enemy. Suddenly, Carl was glared at with such murderous eyes that the words at the tip of his tongue rolled back down his throat. He swallowed what he wanted to say, for he was glared daggers at by a man who had butchered 200 bloodthirsty beasts in cold blood. Roy's bloodlust was worse than that of an entire pack of wolves, and it washed over Carl like a tsunami, almost siphoning the strength in his legs and making him wobble. Stared by those eyes, Carl felt like a deer pressed under a predator's claw, and hence he subconsciously stepped back until his back was touching the gate. Only then did the fear those eyes instilled in his heart subside enough for him to compose himself and come to a halt. Shut up and listen. There are some people you can't afford to offend in this county. I'm one of them. Now, move out of my way when I am talking to you nicely. If I lose my temper, you might end up crippled for life. Roy said as a matter of factly. Drunk or not, this man wouldn't earn his mercy if he kept nagging and taunting him. There was a limit to how much humiliation a man could endure. And Roy's anger was just one push away from reaching his head. Carl gnashed his teeth viciously at Roy. How could he do as he said? Roy humiliated him in front of an entire crowd and his wives. If he didn't teach him a lesson, he would become the butt of every joke, just like that trash third son of the Count. Damn you, damn you, damn you, you can forget about leaving this place in one piece. I'm gonna fight you, to death. While saying that, Carl's hands went for Shadow Pierce's hilt, an heirloom of his family. A sense of absurdity filled everyone present. Literally, no one expected him to be so fearless of the law as to pull out his sword in public and charge at a man like a marauder. Face the power of Shadow Piercer. Leveling endlessly with the strongest system. Chapter 62, Free Elixir. A knight like Shadow holding a lance had already manifested behind him. This was the effect of Shadow Piercer. It created a somewhat real and somewhat illusory knight who would attack the person Carl desired. Carl willed, and almost simultaneously, the knight behind him jumped out and threw the lance at Roy before disappearing. It took a great amount of aura to keep the knight manifested, but Carl lacked that. Whoosh! As the lance shot at him, he fell under great pressure. This attack wasn't something he should take head-on. The strength of this illusory knight was no less than a weapon master, and that was because its summoner was someone as pathetic as Carl. Roy put two shields in its way. Bam! The lance shattered both of them before disappearing. I got you. By that time, Carl had reached a step away from Roy, and his shadow piercer stabbed to the front of his chest. If this hit landed, he would die, and Carl would wash all shame away from his soul. But, just as it reached 3 inches away from its target, a miracle happened. The space in between Roy and the tip of the sword cracked, opening up a small hole of darkness, one hardly ever seen before, and Shadow Piercer went into it. Carl's mentality immediately shattered. He didn't let go of the hilt and did a horse stance and leaned back to push it out of the mouth of darkness. This was such a ridiculous scene that the onlooker's jaws dropped and his wives stood frozen in place. Open hollow corner bracket ding. Congratulations. You've captured Shadow Piercer using your subspace, close hollow corner bracket. Open hollow corner bracket ding. It's detected that an outside force is fighting off the suction force of the subspace to pull Shadow Piercer out. It's recommended that you pour aura into the back of the subspace to increase its suction force, or it will lose this battle, and the Shadow Piercer will be pulled out, close hollow corner bracket. Roy always thought that the subspace could be put to use in battle, it's just that he had never bothered to try it until today, and it looks like it was even better than his guess. The black hole that had opened had an opaque and solid back. Roy placed his hand on it. At his stage, he couldn't manifest aura out of his body, but his aura technique was original and powerful, allowing him to gather and propel shapeless and formless aura out of his body for a short time, like less than a second. Aura rushed out of his palm, infusing into the subspace, increasing its suction force. The sword that Carl was trying all his power to pull out went inside the subspace immediately and vanished forever. This youngster is amazing. Blake had been watching this fight from the highest floor of Bernice's tailor, and he had nothing but praise for Roy. Why do you say so, Grandpa? Bernice asked. A. He's an unawakened teenager better than a level 10 trainee. B. He's born with divine strength. C. He has many tricks up his sleeves. His future is immeasurable. He might give the monster at the Forbidden Capital a run for his money in the adulthood ceremony. Bernice's long lashes trembled, and her eyes showed astonishment. It was rare for her Grandpa Blake to praise someone so much. But today, it's like all the words coming out of his mouth are to praise that guy. Ah. Fuck. I will be damned, if my father finds out I lost it to some stranger's hand. Carl's heart trembled like an afraid little girl, and he sweated so many buckets that his back became drenched and his pale-faced. He glared at Roy. I know you were behind this. Fucking return it to me. Roy felt bewildered. Just because he wants it means he needs to give it back. Since when did this world become a fairy tale? Why doesn't he know? I don't know what you're talking about. Didn't you see the black hole eating it away? Go and ask the person who created that to save my life where your Shadow Piercer is. Roy was in no mood to give this bastard the heirloom back, so he shamelessly refused to return it back by playing the fool. His shamelessness was met with a deadly attack from Carl and his wives. But Roy grabbed his arm and punched his chest with the other with such strength that he was blasted into the building before repeating the process with both of his wives in a way gentler manner. He didn't punch them, just hurled them into the building like he was scoring a home run. Carl smashed through a thin wooden wall and crashed into the building. His body rolled a couple of times, destroying and flipping the tables and stands in his way until it finally stopped moving, and his eyes rolled to the back of his head. His wives were in no position to stand up either. Open hollow corner bracket. You've defeated 3 big bullies of the southern neighborhoods. You get ×1 body cleansing elixir, close hollow corner bracket. Roy jumped inside and came up to Carl and picked him up, and gave him a good few jokes, saying, keep in mind what happened today, this is why you don't mess with just anyone. It's so noisy downstairs. What just happened? Sir Grey, someone's beating up your son downstairs. Voices came from above. Grey looked toward Miss Bernice with a pleading gaze, the meaning of which she was well aware of. Bernice waved her hands at him nonchalantly. Go and check it out. Grey didn't immediately leave and looked to Grandpa Blake for his permission. You're excused. Grey saluted them and rushed out, jumping down to the ground floor from the 3rd in a jiffy, only to see his son grabbed by the collars and lifted above ground by a boy who could not be a day older than 18. Let go of my son. Old Grey was so angered at seeing Carl full of injuries that his hands trembled out of anger. As you wish. Roy freed Carl, and as a result, he dropped to the ground and lost the consciousness he had just regained after hitting his head on a block of wood. Leveling endlessly with the strongest system. Chapter 63, The True Value of the Fur. The waiters thought that Roy wouldn't dare harm Master Grey's son in front of him, but surpassing everyone's expectations. He remained as fearless and true to himself as before he came across Master Grey, and although gazed at by his fierce narrowed eyes, he treated Carl like a ragdoll. You bastard! Did you eat the guts of a beast to be so fearless? Gray shouted, taking a step towards Roy with murder in his eyes, intending to cripple him first before interrogating him just like a foolish lawless man. But he came to a stop just after taking a step as Roy pressed his foot down on the windpipe of his only child, threatening to help him ascend at any second. Now, be a good boy and stay right there for me. You don't want to see me push him into death's embrace, right? Hearing the words he said in a sarcastic tone, Gray's face darkened, fumes of barely controlled anger puffing out his eyes, and he said, "Who are you? Why did you beat my son so mercilessly? And why are you causing trouble at my shop?" Roy's brows drew together as he said, "Oh please, can you not accuse me erroneously? If you consider beating bad dogs as causing trouble, then yes, I did. But if you ask me, I was just fighting back to protect my honor and self-worth. Not any dog can take of my esteemed self. I came here to hire you lots to prepare more than 100 sets of fine costumes for me, but who would have thought a few mad dogs would try to bite me at the gate?" Master Gray's expression was anything but great. The dogs Roy kept mentioning were his son and daughters-in-law. No man would feel great after hearing their family be compared to dogs. His eyes narrowed, and he spewed out, "Forget about hiring us. I wouldn't even bother hearing you out or spare a glance at the materials you present us. Mark my words, these hands will never work to benefit you. And not a single Bernese tailor will work for you as well." "Oh really?" From his subspace, Roy took out the finest quality fur. "How about now?" The snow-white fur fluttered under the moonlight. A pleasant scent wafted off of it, hitting many faces. Struck by the pale yellow lighting of the room, it was like a sea of milky white sparkles. No different than a robe worthy of a holy priest it was. A single look at it made the onlookers desire it. It was a work of heaven, moon-like fur that could transform into a masterpiece. "This is my first time laying eyes on such precious furs. I've read thousands of books but never came across records of such a thing. Just what is this, and why does he have it?" This sounded out from the uppermost floor of the shop. Roy raised his head towards the source of the voice and saw a young girl about his age and an old man close to the railings. They were gazing at the material in his hand in praise, and the desire to acquire it was also plenty in their eyes. "It's no surprise you haven't heard of it. If I am right, it must be fur belonging to a unique beast, the likes of which had disappeared from our continent years ago. There's something special about it too, but I can't pinpoint it. The level of this quality piece isn't. But since it's the only piece, the Duke of the North, who is known for collecting items, and his wife, who likes unique furs, would reward those who present them this." Blake licked his lips in excitement as he gazed at it like it was a heavenly wonder. God knows how this youngster got his hands on it, but only a fool would refuse to handle it. "This old man on the third floor, has someone ever told you that you have an eye for treasure?" Roy praised Blake for having accurate judgment and received a smile in return. "How about you explain to us what it is if you don't mind?" "This is the fur of a Luna. It is the rarest form of a snow wolf. Methods to raise one into a winter wolf exist, but there's no way to raise one into a Luna. Under the moon, there will exist no distinction between its moon and moonlight. Moonlight will coalesce on its surface, and it'll become the very definition of resplendence, arousing the feeling of admiration in people's hearts. This is the only piece just like the old mister said." Roy held it up high and turned to Master Gray with a taunting smile, and spoke. "If you had contributed in making this into something great, your reputation would have surely increased. But, Master Gray, with age, you've gone senile, and your judgment has become cloudy. You abandoned a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to help villains. Congratulations." Master Gray was sized up and down by Roy. Unknowingly, he had been inspected thoroughly by the youngster at this moment. Roy found out about his power level and also understood why he was overlooking everything to side with his son. Unlike the fierce sword count, Master Gray was a sucker for his son, willing to cross mountains of swords for him. Master Gray swallowed his pride nervously and said, "You know what? I've changed my mind about that deal you were offering me. I will get about 120 costumes made for you in days. But, I don't want gold in return. I am only willing to accept the payment you must make to me in the form of 1/4 of this fur." Even old Blake could tell how valuable it was. So, it was impossible for a man specializing in tailoring to not accurately determine its worth. He was greedy for it. That could be seen from the fact that he was willing to work for the man that had knocked senses into his son and disregarded him entirely. Leveling endlessly with the strongest system. Chapter 64, Roar of the Sword is heard once again. The fur of the lunar wolf was very valuable. Don't look at the fact that it was obtained from a level 10 boss monster. That was hardly important. What made it valuable was the fact that it was the only piece in existence. Such a thing wasn't seen before in history and might never appear in the future. Master Gray wanted to get his hands on it at any cost. Whether he would refuse to honor his deal with Roy after that was merely a matter of reputation. And, in front of this piece that could help him gain the favor of a duke, what was his reputation? No, Roy coldly declined him. Even 1/5 of this fur would do. Master Gray's attitude had changed completely, and he was treating Roy with respect now, but sadly, it was already too late. He had gone too far. Their relation was already too strained to be wrung back to normal. Ha 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 ha, Roy laughed, holding nothing back. After his laughter died out, he glanced at Master Grey with utter disdain. Guess what, I changed my mind too. I would never commission scums like you with any job, definitely not one as valuable as this. It's not like there's no other tailor in town. Did you seriously think you're as valuable as this, an only piece? Roy spat at the ground like a rude thug, shocking everyone with his words. Wake up to reality. There are hundreds of people that can replace the job you do. Why would I trust an old fox like you? Roy was right on the mark, as no one doubted that the Greys were scums. One day, Carl got drunk in a bar and bumped into a person and demanded him to apologize, but the man was not willing as he wasn't in the wrong, so Carl got into an argument with the man, which turned into a deadly scuffle. He didn't hold back his strength as a level 10 trainee and killed the person with a few kicks and punches to the head. He should be rotting in jail, but Master Grey protected him, bribing the officials and burying the matter. After all, the lives of poor people didn't compare to the toe of his son. What were they worth? Such a man that had a fair and plump face but a black heart wasn't worthy of Roy's trust. Leaving the precious raw materials with him would become Roy's greatest regret. A sense of absurdity filled the waiters and Grey's hearts, as they could have never expected that one day they would be looked down upon by a stranger. I came here to get these fine materials made into costumes, but I was met with trouble, refusal, closed eyes and ears at every turn. I can't help feeling dissatisfied with your attitude towards a valuable customer. I am leaving this place in disappointment. Don't expect a good review from me. With that said, Roy kicked Carl into Master Grey's embrace before turning around and making his way to the exit. There was no need to waste his time here anymore. A shithole like this didn't deserve to host his esteemed self. Who said you could leave? Just as Roy was planning to sway his way out, the overbearing shout of Master Grey reached his ears. Then, he sensed a great energy fluctuation. Turning around, he caught the sight of Master Grey's palm glowing gold, and his eyes narrowed. Previously, they had shown various kinds of emotions. But now, they were showing utter indifference and anger. This isn't a place where you can come and go as you please. You harmed my son, so receive your punishment. After saying this, Master Grey pushed out his palm. Careful, old Blake frowned. He didn't think Master Grey would attack a junior out of the blue. Bernice's expression was so better. This dog slave was overstepping his boundary and dragging her name to the mud. Old Blake was far from them but could still block the attack for Roy, but he was stopped by Bernice. She shook her head at him, warning him not to interfere. Old Blake halted immediately. She called him Grandpa, but he was just a knight serving her family, and he was absolutely loyal to her. He did as told, thus, and stopped, looking at the palm closing in on Roy. Whoosh! A great hand, the size of 5 meters, manifested in the air and charged toward Roy at a great speed. He was quick to react, and reflection swung downwards. 1/3 of aura in his inner world gathered at the tip of his sword in an instant and charged out, unleashing a mighty roar. A great light of condensed sharpness bursting out of Roy's sword was all that could be seen before the attacks of the two parties met. Boom! The very next instant, a resounding reverberation echoed out, deafening everyone as a great aura shockwave burst out from the point of impact. It not only lifted and shattered the golden monkey statues that weighed dozens of tons but also overturned the floor, destroying most of it and cracking whatever survived. The great wind that bursts out from the point of impact smashed away the tables and chairs, and even some people weren't spared. They were too close and got swept away. How? Master Grey witnessed the worst nightmare of his life. The blinding ray of sword light sliced open the unstoppable golden hand and advanced forward at an impeccable speed. Then, his eyes widened to the size of saucers. The two halves of the hand hadn't dropped to the sides when it reached inches away from its targets, giving him no time to properly defend against it. At most, he could only turn his back to it so that Carl, who was in his hands and breathing shallowly, wouldn't face any mortal danger. PSH, bam! The roar of the sword cut open hideous wounds on his back and plastered his sorry ass into a wall. Leveling endlessly with the strongest system. Chapter 65, Southern District Inner Guards. Master Grey was lucky to survive that attack of Roy, and so was Carl. Heck, if half of the might of the roar of the sword hadn't been sapped away in its struggle against the palm and Master Grey wasn't an advanced level weapon master, it would have chopped him, and then his son in half. Seeing the youngster using a single move to defeat their master, the crowd revealed utter shock as they scurried away, not daring to stay close by in fear of getting embroiled in their battle. Master Grey fell to the ground with his son. If Carl weren't protected, he would have died. Roy didn't want to become a murderer. He had read their background and knew that the tailor cherished his shameless son so much that he would not hesitate to sacrifice himself for Carl. That's the only reason why he didn't pull back punches just then. This bastard, he isn't someone I can defeat. Master Grey turned to him. The fire of anger within the depths of his heart was raging, but his face was redder than it ever had been. He was the leader of a massive group of tailors and, although not good at combat, was still a weapon master. His level was far above the unknown stranger. Anyone could tell that at a single glance. Yet, he wasn't able to stand up after facing the boy's single slash. Utterly disgraced he was. A mouthful of blood he spewed out. Just then, Roy narrowed his eyes even further and gazed at him coldly. I didn't give up my hostage because I was blinded by arrogance. I gave him up because you're not my match. You're a tailor, so use your hands for tailoring, not murder. It doesn't suit you. Master Gray was kicked down by Roy when he was at his lowest, and his face turned from green to pale white. You wanted to see what he was capable of. Old Blake's tone immediately turned warm as he said, Is that why you stopped me? Bernice replied, I noticed he wasn't showing sign of gloom when facing the old servant's weaponized aura and thought he must have a reason, so I held you back. He's young, but I dare say only that monster back at the capital is his match. Her words ended with an easily describable emotion twinkling in her eyes. She was looking forward to the future. Old Blake shared the same question and excitement as her. When two monsters meet each other, who would come out on top? Bernice's lips curled into a smile as pleasant as a gust of wind in summer as she clapped her hands. Fufu, this year's adulthood ceremony is going to be a blast. Roy jerked his sword into the subspace, doing his best to keep up the strong act. His back, drenched with sweat, however, showed how much pain he was in. This was the second time, but he couldn't get used to the pain that comes from using the third song. The roar of the sword wasn't a technique meant to be used by a trainee. The amount of aura that gushes out of the inner world to enter the blood vessels in order to escape the body in an instant was too much for a trainee's body to handle. If it weren't for the fact that his basic stats were all at 50, he would have collapsed here and now, but because his stats were so high, he was able to chug the blood down his throat and go for the exit. No one was left to stop him this time. Or, so he thought. Just then, the neighs of horses could be heard. Dozens of horses were charging toward Bernice's tailors. It was forbidden to directly ride a horse in the county, but horses could be used to draw a carriage at a certain speed limit. These rules were created for the common people to minimize the death rate from horses running over people. However, there was one expectation. The inner guards could leisurely ride a horse in the streets of the county if they had a good reason. Dozens of knights unmounted and walked into the shop. They stood in 4 files, their posture, unlike a dog's tail and straight like a pole. A man stepped out from behind them, walking to the very forefront. He was wearing a helm of different designs and colors than the others. It was like 2 curled-up silver wings. Ferociousness could be seen through the gaze. The appearance of this person brightened up Master Gray's expression immediately. Sir Dale, you answered my distress call at just the right time. Before he came to find fault with Roy, he had asked his servant to seek the help of the inner guards. He knew they would come in handy, but he didn't think he would be using them in this way. This bastard is the one causing a ruckus at my place. Look, he ruthlessly beat my son bloody and even injured me to this state without hesitation. Please take him into custody and drag him to a cell. I beg of you, do us justice. Gray growled to the knight in question, making one wonder where Master Tailor in him had gone to. He succeeded in fooling the just-arrived knights as he looked really pitiful with a blood back and face and tears in his eyes. Heck, even the captain of the Southern Inner Guard, who was known to be chivalrous, believed him instantly, judging Roy to be some kind of vicious criminal. Miss, do you want me to wring his neck? Old Blake asked for permission to kill Master Gray. He was a servant of his lady, and his deeds would harm her reputation, but the things he was doing were too questionable, so much that Old Blake felt the need to cut him up in order to put an end to the disgraceful act he was putting up. Let it be. I want to see how the situation plays out, Bernice said. Leveling endlessly with the strongest system. Chapter 66, Revelation. With his antics, Gray also succeeded in disgusting Roy. What are you supposed to be, a dog? Roy rolled his eyes at Master Gray in disgust. Sir Dale ignored Roy, who was making fun of the Master Tailor in his presence, and went up to Gray, helping him up to his feet, and with a calm face saying, Please stand. A man of your status needs not to bow to me or any of us. It will be mistaken as us disrespecting you. As he said, a Master Tailor had a certain status in the Empire. Although not as grand as a noble, they needn't bow in the presence of guards, or it will be taken as the guard bullying them. Dale was afraid of false rumors spreading and didn't want to be involved in any drama, so even though Master Gray was on his last leg, he picked him up, hurrying him up to his feet. Only after did he turn to Roy. You must be the cause of all this destruction. What do you have to say for yourself? Sir Dale didn't come off as offensive to Roy, but he did find him quite judging as expected of one of the 4 Inner Guards captains. I am not to be blamed. These 3 tried to bully me. They lacked the capability to, however, and were taught a lesson in return. Just then, this sire here came to help the villains and sneak attacked me with the intention to kill me where I stood, only to be met with defeat at the hands of the very person he considered an ant. Both times, I acted in self-defense. Now, you can be the judge of who's in the right and wrong. He said all that not to get convicted of a false crime. What utter nonsense. You're good at making up plays. Do you expect the knights to believe your falsely made stories, full of loopholes? This was a heaven-sent opportunity to get even with Roy, so Master Gray didn't mind spitting black paint of lies at him again. Sir Dale wasn't one to come to a judgment blindly. He liked to hear both sides of the story before coming to a judgment. So he gave Roy a chance to defend himself again. Do you have evidence to back up your claims? Yes, I do. Roy nodded at him before pointing at the crowd and saying, these people can verify my statement. They've seen everything that took place. Why don't you ask them? Master Gray smiled hideously. Idiot, you've signed your own defeat with that. His smile went unnoticed by the guards, but Roy saw it, and a forbidding feeling took root in his heart. He could feel something bad was going to happen to him but didn't know what. Only some minutes after, when not a single person spoke up for Roy's sake, did he realize the cause of the gloominess. They all kept silent when questioned by the knights, repeatedly shaking their heads to pin the blame on Roy. Most of them were the common man, unwilling to offend the rich for a stranger. Some among them worked for Master Gray. Any act of justifying Roy would land him a free ticket to joblessness. The others were mostly common people to whom he had regularly given rations. He was responsible for their bread and butter. So, why would anyone speak in Roy's favor and harm their source of weekly rations? Horrified to discover that he was in the midst of disgusting people, Roy cursed at them. Shameless. All of you are shameless. He was in a den of snakes. Master Gray was its head. No one was willing to come up and cut this head off. I've had enough of your nonsense. It wasn't Sir Dale but Knight Cameron who took immediate action against Roy. Guards, capture him. If he resists, use force. We'll interrogate him down at the station. Enticed by his command, dozens of knights immediately tried to apprehend Roy. Roy stood still like a status without wheels and gazed at the crowd, the knights, and Master Gray with cold, red eyes. Feeling too ashamed to meet Roy's gaze head-on, the onlookers lowered their heads when it swept past them. Clearly, they felt guilty about something, but what? They dared not say, and no knight was interested in working hard enough to get to the very bottom of this mess. It was better to just get this over with and drag Roy to the hellish prison of the county. You guys have done it. I guess I've no choice left but to reveal who I am. Roy didn't want to reveal his identity as news of his greatness would surely spread and reach Rose Charlotte's ears, and then there would be a chance of her bouncing back to him, but firstly, he had the divorce agreement. It was only missing his signature. Secondly, he would use everything in his power to keep her away. There was no way he was gonna let a disease-filled hole in his bed. Who dares to touch I, the noble of the glorious Sun Empire, the descendant of the mighty Baldwin, the son of Badulf, the fierce sword count, Roy Badulf Baldwin? Just as the knights were upon him, he shouted that out majestically. Immediately all of them came to an immediate halt. Pin-drop silence took this place hostage. Only moments later, the whooshing sound of wind and the rustling noises of leaves getting brushed by gentle gusts could be heard. Cameron, who had raised his hand to handcuff Roy, lowered his hands, no longer daring to touch him. How could he dare to treat a noble lord like a criminal? He still valued his job, all right. Fuck, this guy is a tiger acting like a low-key pig to eat the snake called Grey. He is a noble and a higher-ranking one at that, but he still played along with them. Why didn't anyone consider telling me who he was? Fuck Master Gray, your stupidity will not only ruin you but also me. He internally cursed 9 generations of Master Gray's family with a face contorted in displeasure. Leveling endlessly with the strongest system. Chapter 67, Power of Status. Master Gray saw the situation turning against him and immediately added fuel to the fire about to die out. Why are you not apprehending this criminal? Just because he says he's this and that doesn't mean he really is. There have been several cases of commoners taking the identity of nobles to get out of trouble with the guards. He must be like them too. Without proof, don't believe a word of what he says. Black lines appeared on Roy's face as he was too annoyed by the bastard called Master Gray. The knights looked at each other, taking not a single step forward. Knight Dale was also quiet. He had his skepticism about Roy's identity. His figure was just like the rumored third son of the Count. But, if Roy didn't have evidence to prove his identity, he had no intention of moving to help. Yes, that must be it. How can anyone I meet on the road buy that noble? Listening to Master Gray's reasoning, Cameron's eyes lit up, and then he immediately grabbed one of Roy's arms, twisting it to his back. Then, he went for the other. Right then, Roy shouted out, I'm carrying the evidence of my status with me. And then, he raised something in the air with his free hand that was yet to be grabbed by the knight. Looking at it caused several pairs of eyes to widen to the size of saucers. What is this? Why did everyone freeze at the sight of it? It's the Baldwin symbol. Having it means you're an inner part of the fierce sword count's family. This bastard, he is really, that son of his. Master Gray swore out loud unknowingly and earned deadly glares from dozens of majestic inner guards. How dare he curse at the son of their count? Was this bastard courting death? Stared at by so many hungry wolf-like eyes, Master Gray swallowed nervously and stepped back. Sir Dale's calm facade shattered. There was no mistaking it, Roy was indeed the Count's son. This medallion was given to him by Arlo when he was an infant. It signifies his position as an inner member of the Count's family. They were those who had Baldwin's blood coursing through their veins. It allows him to command all the inner guards, hired thugs of his scummy father, of the county. He had no presence back in the manor, but he could throw his weight around everywhere else in the county. With a jaw threatening to touch the ground, Master Gray gaped at him. You're the Count's third son, Roy. You already know I am. Why ask? Roy didn't spare Master Grey while saying that, signifying he wasn't interested in talking with this lizard. He glanced at the knight that he found uncomfortably close to his esteemed self. My dear knight, do you still want to apprehend me? If not, do unhand me. Forgive me, my liege. Cameron apologized to him and moved back a respectful distance. Sir Dale bent his knees, kneeling to Roy. I, Captain of the Southern District Inner Guards, Dale Daleks, greet Lord Roy. I, Leader of the Winged Lion, pay my respect to Lord Roy. I, Lance of the County, pay my respect to Lord Roy. We plead you to accept our greetings. Looking at him, Roy's eyes glistened in amazement. This was the power of status. The ruler of this county was his family. Everyone in it was their subject. As he was a member of that family, everyone needed to humble themselves before him. And that included these valiant guards who were levels above Roy. You may rise. Roy waved his hand at them. One by one, they started to stand up. What would you like us to do? Sir Dale tried to cozy up to Roy. He wasn't the type that liked to lick the feet of people in power, but he was truly amazed to know that the boy who kicked the ass of Carl and Master Grey was actually the youngest of his count's family. He knew the situation the county was in and understood that they needed talented youngsters to compete for the entrance token, and seeing a bright ray of light appear in their darkest time warmed his heart immensely. He couldn't help but look at Roy in a favorable light. Nothing, to Sir Dale, Roy only had this to say: I hope for this trial to be conducted fairly. Roy turned to the crowd again and then said, You've wronged me once. I hope you won't do it again. If there is anyone with a righteous heart amongst you, now's the time to prove who was in the wrong and who was acting in self-defense. This will be the last time I ask you to be honest. No matter how intelligent and scheming Roy was, he hadn't read the Empire's lawbook and didn't know lying to a noble of his ranking was a crime. 10 whips would be a minimum of what they would eat only if they admitted they lied to pin the blame on Roy and make Master Grey indebted to them. They were bewildered and didn't know whether to speak up now that it was too late or keep to themselves and think of a way to save their hide. I would like to verify Sir Roy's previous statements. A cloaked man stepped out of the crowd, walking up to Roy. A blade stopped at his neck as he reached for him, and Cameron looked at the disguised man with narrowed eyes. Reveal yourself. The disguised man took off his covering. Roy's eyebrows jumped. He was familiar with this man. Roy commanded the knight. Please put down your blade. The knight took his weapon away, allowing the pudgy man to walk up to his target. Manager Deb, what are you doing here? Roy questioned the pudgy man. Sir, you've mistaken me for someone else. Although he said that, Roy was finding it impossible to believe that this man wasn't Deborah. But, how could you share such striking similarity with him? Roy questioned the man beside him. He smiled. It befitted his harmless and innocent face, which was somewhat ruddy. I'm his younger twin. My name's B. Leveling endlessly with the strongest system. Chapter 68, Silver Lusterhole's true background. Hearing his words, recognition dawned on Roy. Oh, I see. Master Grey also recognized this guy as his rival and roared, What could you be doing here? Did you come here to spy on us? Pear, I came here to poach a valuable customer from you. Who would have thought that you'll upset him so terribly? B stared at Master Grey with a straight face. Master Grey, do you have no shame? How could you openly admit to committing an act of thieving customers from your rival's guild? B beamed at Roy. Sir, I am the manager of the Silver Lusterhole. I heard a lot of good things about you from my brother and a certain someone. I sought you out to do some business with you. That certain someone might be Gaynor. Roy said, let's talk about this somewhere else. B verified his statements, and seeing him, many others also spoke in Roy's favor, leaving Master Grey devastated. What should we do with them? Sir Dale asked. Let off those who lied. They struggle to survive every day. There is no need to make life hard for them than it already is. The distinction between rich and poor in the county was quite visible. Life was far easier for the poor compared to before, but they still needed to work every day to place food on the table, and they enjoyed time drinking in the bar. But if they ate 10 whips, it was hard to say if they would survive. Roy wasn't black-hearted. He forgave them. Master Grey, as for you, your son, and your daughters-in-law, it's hard for me to overlook your actions. It's time for punishment. He showed a terrible smile to Master Grey, and he trembled under his gaze. The knights, finally aware of what took place, grabbed Carl and his 2 wives, taking them to the prison, while Master Grey was forced to fork out a huge compensation to Roy. It was 1,000 gold coins and a set of rare runic threading needles, not too big an amount but still good enough. Open hollow corner bracket ding. A new quest, Purging Evil, has been generated, close hollow corner bracket. Open hollow corner bracket quest info close hollow corner bracket. Grey is the descendant of a branch family of Ackley's. He always had an interest in weaving, and the class he awakened further boosted his tailoring skill, allowing him to reach the rank of master tailor without the support of his family. He established himself in the county and used his crooked business mindset to commit many atrocities. May the warrior bring him to justice. Open hollow corner bracket goals close hollow corner bracket. Uncover Master Gray's crimes and get him punished. Open hollow corner bracket time limit close hollow corner bracket. 1 week. Open hollow corner bracket rewards close hollow corner bracket. Ninim's true magic. Ninim's mana meditation technique. He lacked evidence to convict Master Gray of any major crimes. Let's go, Roy said to Manager B. Please follow me. Manager B took him to the Silver Luster Hall's inner compound. They sat down at a comfortable round table separated from the hustle and bustle of the store and started conserving about great things. He found Roy for one simple reason, to provide him with the tailors he needed to transform the furs into costumes. The other party was willing to work for him at a cheap labor cost. Roy had no reason to refuse his offer. Then, I'll trust you with this job. Roy took out huge boxes of raw materials from his subspace, placing them on the floor. They piled up into the size of a small boulder. Placing your trust in us is not a wrong choice, B replied, you won't be disappointed. We'll do everything in our power to make sure of that. There is a red hall, and there's a silver luster hall. It must have cost quite a lot to build these. Is there any relation between the two? Roy asked. You guessed right, Sir Roy. Our origin is the same. We're backed by the Golden Pixie Auction House. On the surface, it may seem like we're just opening auction houses in the capital and the 4 dukedoms, but the truth is that we also have places like this, managed by the capable members of the subordinate houses of the Eastern Duke. From this, the desire to become no one in the entire empire could really be seen. Roy blinked his eyes at Manager B in bewilderment. Why are you revealing the inner workings of your organization to me? Surely, he was no fool that liked to blabber a lot, right? Because a part of my job is scouting talented youths like you and giving them better opportunities than the masses. Manager B took out a jade seal from his pocket. It wasn't plain in shape. It was carved and chiseled into the shape of a mythical creature, one that brings luck. He brought it closer to Roy. I would like to bestow the Black Pixie symbol to you. With this, you'll be treated as a VVIP at any hall and auction house that shares the same origin as us. The platform fee will also decrease to only 2%. The last part of the deal made by Manager B was what interested Roy the most. You mean if something I put up for auction is sold for 200 gold coins, the Golden Pixie auction house would only take 4 coins as a fee for providing me with a platform if I show them this? This deal was too good to be true. He had some skepticism about it. Manager B's confirmation was like a signal for Roy to act. Then, it'll be my pleasure. He leaned forward, grabbing the Pixie symbol out of his hand and storing it in his subspace. Roy left the Silver Luster Hall, and after bypassing the barrier with the help of the medallion, he sneaked into the manor and returned to his nest. The little magpie was anxiously waiting for him. Seeing Amelia moving from the right side of the courtyard connected to the room to the other side and then back again and repeating this process, Roy laughed. His laughter attracted her to come to a stop and look back. You can stop pacing back and forth now. I am back. Roy admired her presidency a little bit. If it were him, he wouldn't be waiting for someone for so long. A pleasant smile blossomed on her face when she saw him. Welcome home. Amelia, do not let anyone into the room. Roy opened the door and snuck inside, immediately sitting on the bed. Amelia bowed to him in respect. Yes, my master. She closed the door, not seeing him pull 2 elixirs out of thin air. Recently, he had earned 3 treasures, the Nectar of the Sun, which was given to him by Arthur, the Beast Core Purification Method, which he earned from changing the fate of a lass. The Body Cleaning Elixir, which he got from defeating Carl and his wives. 2 of them could be immediately used by him. Roy carefully inspected them. They had an abundant amount of energy, but they wouldn't explode his body, and he came to the conclusion that taking them both at the same time would be more beneficial than consuming one at a time. He unlidded both the bottles. Instantly, a pleasant candy-like scent and the scent of disinfection filled the room. Endorphin is the chemical produced by the body during exercise. It makes a person feel good and could be taken as a reward of some sort for working hard. But just smelling the aroma wafting in the air caused a surge in Roy's endorphin level. Leveling endlessly with the strongest system. Chapter 69, a furious increment in strength. I know that the Nectar of the Sun is extremely beneficial to trainees and weapon master, and even smelling it would amaze me, but I didn't expect the body cleansing elixir to have a similar effect. It looks like it isn't any less valuable than it. Their effects varied from person to person, but they were equally priceless. Roy emptied the content of the 2 bottles inside his mouth. 2 streams, 1 gold and 1 silvery white, charged down his throat, coming in contact with his stomach's bile. In an instant, they transformed into 2 torrents of energy that charged throughout his body ferociously. Roy's body swelled up, and veins popped up on his neck. Fuck, this is too much. A great sense of discomfort and pain filled him. He was mentally prepared for this to happen, but he still couldn't help but curse out when actually experiencing it firsthand. The first one entered his inner world. A process called fusion began. The gasified version of the Nectar of the Sun merged with his inner world, increasing its size at a rate visible to the naked eye. If there was anyone to witness this, they would have drooled uncontrollably and felt envious of Roy. Increasing the size of one's inner world was a hard challenge faced by all awakened. They had to face 4 life and death challenges to widen it to a certain size suitable for ascending to the rank of Aura Master, the rank above Weapon Master. But Roy, his inner world was reaching the level of an advanced level Weapon Master, and he hadn't completed even a single life and death challenge. What's more, he was yet to become an adult and awaken. There was no doubt in his heart that once his inner world digested the huge volume of the sun's nectar, it would leap to the next level. His focus shifted to the torrent of energy causing that filled up all the vessels in his body, expanding them and, as a result, making him feel greatly pained. All the hardships he had faced in his life couldn't compare to the level of pain he was feeling at this moment. It was as if 1,000 ants were crawling in his body. It was as if 1,000 heated pins were being used to prick him. There was no better way to explain it than just calling it Hell's Mercy, a pain that yanks breaths out of one's chest. The pain brought by the cleansing elixir wasn't something a human could endure. Yet, unwilling to squeal like a dying pig, Roy gritted his teeth, deafening his roars. The energy traveling throughout his blood vessels targeted the impurities in them. Most people in the world have impurities in their blood vessels. Aura, or as some would like to call it, inner energy, is injected into the blood vessels after leaving the inner world. Only through it can it escape the body or enter the inner world. The speed at which this process takes place depends on a person's will, meditation method, the size of their blood vessel, and the impurities in them. That's to say, the clarity of blood vessels affected the speed and efficiency of inner energy absorption and expulsion. Having faced years of poisoning, Roy's blood vessels were full of impurities. The feces of the parasite on his magic gate had taken root there. It wasn't without a reason that he felt greatly pained each time he sang the third song of Ninum. To play it, he had to push a vast amount of aura out of his body and infuse it with his sword in an instant. This act wasn't suitable for a body with impurities in its blood vessels. That's why he was punished each time he used this. But the body cleansing elixir was like a hand grabbing these impurities, expelling them. They came out of his pores in the shape of black material. This torturous process lasted for half an hour. By then, he was caked in dust. Open hollow corner bracket ding. Congratulations. You've refined the body cleansing elixir. All the impurities on your body have been pushed out. You've gained the innate energy refining body. Close hollow corner bracket. It is finally over. Roy curled his finger into a fist and roared out in excitement, but only a weak voice came out. His hair was scattered on his forehead, and he was drenched in sweat. The minutes-long struggle had left him with little to no strength. Due to clenching for too long, his jaw felt sore. But, everything was worth it. Open hollow corner bracket ding. You've activated the shadow manual. Close hollow corner bracket. The aura in the atmosphere charged into Roy's body at a rapid phase dozens of times faster than before, flowing through his blood vessels to enter his inner world. Previously, he wouldn't dare to recklessly absorb such a high amount of aura in such a short time, but now he could because his blood vessels lacked a single trace of impurity. Just as he did that, uncountable golden wisps escaped his inner world, infusing with his blood vessels. In the blink of an eye, they widened to a size incomparable to before. Open hollow corner bracket ding. Congratulations. Due to consuming 2 types of elixir at the same time, you've experienced a synchronization effect. Your blood vessels have widened. You can now absorb and release an amount of aura that your past self can't rival. Close hollow corner bracket. Now, as the size of his blood vessels has quadrupled, Roy could play the third song twice without feeling any discomfort. He couldn't do the same before, as the chance of his blood vessels exploding was 100%. His present self was unrivaled by his past. He remained seated and focused on keeping his breathing stable and refining the sun's nectar. Open hollow corner bracket ding. Congratulations. Your inner world used the sun's nectar as nourishment to increase its size to the level of the advanced level weapon master. Close hollow corner bracket. He could now store a ridiculous amount of aura in his inner world. If push comes to shove and he had no choice but to fight to the very fight, making his sword roar 10 times wouldn't be a problem if the damage to his blood vessels were to be overlooked. Leveling endlessly with the strongest system. Chapter 70, Becoming a Mage. Roy's body was caked in impurities that smelled like shit. Carried by the wind, it wafted out of the room. Amelia, who was standing guard just outside his next, scrunched up her nose. What is this awful smell? Why is it coming from the room? What about my master? She opened the door and went inside, only to see a black-faced Roy. He looked nothing like before, but because his figure was 1 in a billion, she recognized him immediately. Picking up a towel, she went up to clean his face. He immediately raised his hand, stopping her. I know I smell horrendous. You need not force yourself. Keep a safe distance away from me. Whether it's the you who shine gloriously under the sun while helping the bullied or the one who didn't know how to hold a proper talk, you're all the same to me. No matter what state you are in, I'll always treat you like my master, with respect and an attitude well befitting a maid. Amelia gave him a beautiful smile, wet the towel, and used it to clean the dirtiness off his face. Roy felt touched by her words. Her level of loyalty towards him was something he could never have for someone else. He admired her, but like a shameless master, he ordered her to help him to the big body of water outside the manor. The manor had an outdoor pool capable of housing 15 people. Because Noah and Arthur weren't in the county, their friends wouldn't visit this place, and hence, it hadn't been used for weeks, and no one had tended to it either. The good news is that the runic system embedded in the side walls of the pool kept it clean and warm. Without a hic, Roy took off his soiled clothes and entered it, causing the water level to rise and the water to come out of the pool and reach Amelia's boots. As he bathed, the soot covering his body was taken off and drifted in the water. Amelia, using a bucket of water, cleared the water from filth. After having strolled the city for several hours today, you must be quite tired. I believe the herbs Lord Arlo left for you will prove helpful to you. I'll go and fetch them, Amelia said to her. That, I would really like. Roy praised her for being thoughtful. The pack of herbs Arlo had given him was capable of transforming normal water into a medicinal bath. When Amelia emptied it into the pool, various multicolour herbs could be seen floating around Roy. They released a pleasant scent that held the property of calming one's nerves. The multicoloured scents wafted off to Roy. Smelling them, he felt like entering a dreamland. Open hollow corner bracket ding. Congratulations. Because you've experienced soaking in medicinal water for 5 minutes, your tense nerves have relaxed, your pain receptors have temporarily become dull. The inflammation and swelling in your body have reduced by a marginal amount, and the stiffness in your joints has decreased. Close hollow corner bracket. 5 minutes later, another system's notification rang in his mind. Open hollow corner bracket ding. Congratulations. Because you've experienced soaking in medicinal water for 5 minutes, your health has recovered by 1 unit. Close hollow corner bracket. Because of the fighting that took place in the morning, his health had decreased by a few points. But relishing this bath for 10 more minutes would give him a full HP bar. So, Roy remained inside the pool. Arlo didn't lie to him about the herb's properties, but they were better than he made him out to be. Where was Arlo? Hadn't he seen him in the past few days? Arlo had seemingly vanished from the face of the county ever since Roy had that talk with him. Amelia was eagerly standing next to the pool, ready to heed his call. She had served him dutifully for years and would continue to do so in the future and deserved to be rewarded. She had the talent to become a mage. Thus, Roy considered teaching her magic. The chances of her betraying him were 0. He didn't need to worry about wasting his efforts on an ungrateful dog. Should I scrub your back? Amelia offered to give a thorough cleaning to Roy with a smile. But she was met with a calm declination. No need. He was preoccupied with the thoughts of helping Amelia become a mage apprentice, so of course, he lacked the mind to enjoy a cute-faced maid scratching his back. He looked at Amelia calmly. She looked back at him. Their gaze met. How can I help you? Amelia, I will chant a few lines. Repeat them after me. Don't ask why. Hearing his words, Amelia felt bewildered. Okay. But she regularly agreed. No matter what he demands from her, she would fulfill it unconditionally. Do you feel any different? I can see waves of blue dots surrounding us. Because you're born with an innately open magic gate, you're able to perceive mana far better than others just by reciting the meditation method. Your great talent for magic is to be envied. I have the talent to become a mage. Really? Roy nodded at her. Now think about guiding the mana particles into your body, and you'll become an apprentice mage. It should be like breathing for you because you have an innately open magic gate. Amelia revealed a hint of confusion. Quote. How do you know? It wasn't impossible to determine a person's strength without using special testing equipment, but the same can be said when it comes to a person's physique or internal condition. I've my ways. Amelia was curious how he found out, but he said not a word more, leaving her hanging on. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and complete your advancement to an apprentice mage. Sorry. Following Roy's teachings, Amelia directed mana into her sea of mana. It was empty and the size of a fist. Only a few blue wisps were able to enter it before she found out that she could absorb mana from the surrounding no more and stopped. Open hollow corner bracket ding. Congratulations. Your disciple has advanced from a normal human being to the mage apprentice level. You get +5 eternal weed. Close hollow corner bracket. Open hollow corner bracket ding. Congratulations. You've changed the fate of Roy's maid, Amelia Violet. You gained 5 additional eternal weed. Close hollow corner bracket. The process of a mortal transitioning into a mage wasn't as easy as Amelia made it out. One would have to endure a lot of pain to reach the stage Amalia had reached. For example, Roy would first need to induce mana into his body, which is a painful process. Then, he would have to wait for his body to get used to having mana inside and learn different methods to move it about. Only then would he be able to use it as a raw force to smash open his magic gate. There have been instances of people failing hundreds of times before succeeding, but each failed attempt rocks the body from head to toe and leaves a bitter taste in the mouth. Because Amelia was luckily born with an open magic gate, she didn't need to experience the hell a human needs to go through to become an apprentice mage. Roy beamed at her. Congratulations for advancing to the first stage of magic, Amelia. He was honestly happy for her, although he couldn't deny that he did feel jealous of her talent, but he didn't show it to her, fearing that he would make her feel downcast. "It's all thanks to you, my master." She smiled back at him and gave him a cute little bow. This became the night that Amelia learned she had a talent for magic. And, on this very night, her master also helped her become an apprentice mage. Thus, she was immensely happy.